Episode 48. Fire Mountain, episode 48. Welcome to Fire Mountain, episode number 48, on this start of the festive season. So, an early Merry Christmas to you. Obviously, looking around, wondering, where is Dom? Where will he come from? Who's this rustling in the trees, knocking down the. Hey! Hey! The palest Santa you've ever seen. Hello. Hold on, you're on mute.
I said I'm regretting that now. I'm out of breath.
It's crazy, but welcome to Fire Mountain. It's great to have you. I know you're ill. I didn't hear the jingle bell. Go back, do it again. Do the jingle bell.
Dude.
Do the jingle bell. Okay, we'll just pretend like we're doing this all over again. Intro, yabba, yabba, yabba. Welcome to Fire Mountain, yabba, yabba. Where's Dom? Hey, I heard the jingle bells.
Yeah. And now I'm out of breath.
Yeah, dude. So how are you feeling? Obviously, we're doing Fire Mountain from the house again because you've got the sickness.
I've got this viral thing that's going around at the moment, so that's fun. I've been so rough this week.
Man.
I've got my hoodie on, which is a blessing. But I even feel myself breaking out into like a little sweat just wearing a woolly hat because
it's crazy.
You've been in as well, haven't you?
I've been ill, but not as bad as you, and I'm beginning to feel all right. But dude, oh man, it's favor of the Lord. I feel all right.
It's what it is. Ill. I'd rather get it done now though, so that coming to Christmas, immune to everything that's out there.
Yes, because you don't want to ruin the big day.
Dealt with, nip it in the bud. All of my kids have been down with it. Louise has been down with it. Nice. I mean, they started it, and then I got it off them. Nice. But yeah, it's been a crazy old week because normally, like, I don't really get ill that much, and if I do, it's maybe for like an afternoon or something. But this has been like day after day, just like that. But
I had a question for you. I had a question off the bat because obviously you got Christmas decks up everywhere, but don't you think the World Cup's ruining Christmas?
Well, what makes you say that?
Because it doesn't feel like Christmas at all. I feel like before Christmas begins, you have to get through the World Cup.
Well, because I've been a bit ill this week, I've enjoyed having a few football matches to watch. I've quite enjoyed that. But you're right. It doesn't feel like it's not normal World Cup time. Everything feels a little bit out. That's. Have you watched FIFA? Have you watched that FIFA documentary on Netflix?
No, not yet. I wanted to though. Is it bad?
Oh, you should. That is so interesting. Talks about the corruption of FIFA basically, and now why, we're doing the World Cup in the desert at Christmas.
That's correct. Because did you watch on the England-Wales game, every time they went into the president of FIFA, everyone in the stadium booed him.
Yeah,
I was like, man.
And in theory, he's not a corrupt one either.
Yeah.
in theory, he's like, he's the fix to the corruption.
Oh,
but yet FIFA are just despised now as an entity. But that documentary ain't going to help them much. But it does feel a little bit weird. Because, like, normally when you're watching the World Cup, you're having a barbecue, might be having a beer in the garden, having a kick around with your kids. But obviously this year, it's so weird because it's just pitch black outside.
Yeah.
But the England are doing quite well.
They are.
And tonight, as this has been broadcast, England, I'm sure, are getting ready to beat Senegal. So that's good.
Or go into one of the greatest upsets ever known to man.
Obviously, you're South African. Do you watch England play?
I do. So I watched all of the England games so far because my kids want to watch them.
Yeah.
Would I sit through? I would if I could take back my life of the England versus the USA. I would take my life back. I felt like I've wasted 2 hours of my life watching. I don't know what that was, but I enjoyed the England-Wales game. That was quite fun, especially the second half. I feel like it's when cricket went to 2020, and everybody just started hitting sixes and fours as much as they could, and you thought, I can get on board with that. That's what I felt like in the second half. So I can get on board with this. Knock in the goals. I can get on board with it.
Well, this is the challenge now because obviously you're preparing for a move to the south of Wales. It puts you in a difficult position.
It does.
Because obviously I'm guessing this year you're supporting England.
This year I'm supporting England. Next year I'll probably support England because let's be honest.
You might not have many friends there then. Because typically English people support. This is the thing with the home nations. England always supports Scotland and Wales, right? Northern Ireland or whatever. We always support them. And like, if we get knocked out, we would want them to get as far as they can. But that is not reciprocated whatsoever.
No,
They
no, no,
literally
no.
hate England. They literally hate England. Like, they would support any other team that we're playing. Like,
I'm pretty sure I saw people from Wales wearing half Wales, half USA,
yeah,
painting on their face.
yeah, exactly. Anything, honestly, they just despise England, and I don't know what
Dude.
that's to do with, like, our historic abuses of the Welsh people. I don't know, but
That would be great if just every time you go into argument with them, brought out history.
Yeah, it's just a little thing called history that gets in the way. But yeah, I was thinking about you because I thought this time next year, you'll be watching these sorts of competitions with Welsh people, and therefore you'll be obliged to support Wales. So bless you.
I'll have the same approach as I have this time. I'm not a group sport watcher. I don't enjoy watching with other people because you're all into it. You shout at the television.
Oh yeah,
like you're big time into it, and I'm like, it's a television. They can't hear you. He doesn't give one about what you're saying. What
actually,
are you
doing? I got a cheeky tattoo yesterday.
What? Hold on.
No, I'm joking. I got the 3 lions.
Oh, I would have loved that if you just dropped trowel and went, "Here we go."
Yeah, I've got It's Coming Home.
I actually thought about you when I was watching that. I thought, because when I was busy watching the England game at the end of the game, I thought, I bet Dom's sitting there just whistling, "It's coming home."
Oh man, it affects everything for me. This football, though, always, even my devotional time with the Lord, because like literally, it just monopolizes my thinking. And what's really funny is I've been reading through Ezekiel, and on the day when we were playing Iran, it was all about Southgate in the book of Ezekiel. Southgate kept just coming up, and I'm there going,
it's prophetic.
Lord, is this a sign, Lord? I was like, are you trying to speak to me through this, Lord? Is it coming home?
So what you're saying to me is throughout the season now, we should be expecting a weird mix of theology and football and nothing to do with Christmas until after the 18th.
Yeah, well, maybe. Hey, I've been thinking about this because obviously I preached this morning, and obviously we're running up to that now.
Yeah.
You've been doing 2 doctrinal things over the last couple of weeks, haven't you? Which has been cool. We've been looking at the Trinity and the return of Christ.
Yeah.
Right. So I was thinking, right, on Sunday, do I continue in this doctrinal thing and think about the Incarnation, right? Which led me to be thinking about this. What was Jesus doing before he was Jesus? Do you know what I mean? Like, obviously,
have you listened to my preach on the Trinity? Have you heard anything?
No, what did you say about that?
Well, I would go. I think that what is profound in the coming of Jesus is God goes through a shift in makeup.
Okay.
So that would be the John thing where he says the Word became flesh and dwelt amongst us. So an ontological shift. But what you never read is the flesh returned to be Word. So God becomes flesh through Jesus, and then Jesus is taken into heaven.
Yeah.
So now flesh, God brings in to the makeup of who he is.
Okay.
So this shift happens, but I think that there is something about that deep connectedness we have to God that is spoken through not just what Jesus did, but actually how Jesus is. And I think that ties into a lot of thinking I would have around soul and the fact that we're living soul. So our soul requires bone, flesh. We need this stuff to be soul. So that would be like Genesis 3. It talks about the fact that we're nephesh. God breathes life and become nephesh, living soul.
Yeah.
So it's not just a part of, we are soul, like all of who we are. We're not split like a Greek thinking kind of way. So I have kind of comfort in that. But I think before that, you've got the Word. It's got to be the Word exists before Jesus. And I think that in and of itself is interesting, because what do you make of the silence between the Old and the New Testament if the Word is what's happening there?
So obviously, so we say Jesus is the Word, right?
Yeah. So we would need to affirm. So I have no real answer for this. So this could go down a heretical path quickly.
All right.
But do you think that in Jesus saying, in the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So the Trinity in the Old Testament is made up of Father, Spirit, and Word.
Do I think that?
Well, because that's what we're told.
No, I don't think so. I don't know. I know that's like a. I don't know. No, I don't.
Well, because I think where it gets murky is it also, I can't remember the verse, but the verse that says, before the start of time, the Lamb of God was already slain. So this idea of the pre-existence.
Yes.
Jesus pre-existed Jesus being on the earth.
Yeah.
But is that pre-existence, do you think, in the Word form or in the Jesus as Son of God form?
So I don't know. I've said this before, so I do think it. I might have even said it today, this morning. I don't know yet. But like,
because this is only going out live straight after this morning.
Well,
so you may have said it, but you don't want to give it away.
So the John 1 thing, right,
Yeah.
where John talks about Jesus being the Logos of God.
Yeah.
Like, is he talking about it being the literal word of God? Or is he speaking to that? I think it's that a Greek philosophical standpoint, which is the Logos is the reason for everything. That John was taking like something that would have been familiar as the Logos, which is like the reason for everything, and saying, look, Jesus is the Logos. And what we've done is we've gone, oh, Jesus is the Word. And so when God speaks in the creation account, that was Jesus getting involved in creation. Now, I don't think that's a huge leap because I do believe that without Jesus, nothing was made. But I guess what it leads me to think is, how did Jesus exist before Jesus existed in Bethlehem?
Yeah.
Like before the manger, like, I don't know. I guess it's my limited ability to understand, like, there's this Christness.
Yeah.
That like is then infused with humanity. You know,
and that creates
Logos becoming flesh, the reason for everything taking on flesh.
And that becomes the struggle with the idea of incarnation.
Yeah.
Because where does incarnation happen? Is it only in Jesus getting born through Mary in the New Testament? This now he's kind of, or is it pre this kind of Jesus? What, I don't know what. That's the thing. Is what is that? What was he a person? Was he a was he the Son of God before the New Testament, or was he not the Son of God before the New Testament?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think what's interesting, I was reading Hebrews 11 the other day, and it talks about Moses, and it says he considered the reproach. This is about Moses. Yeah. He considered the reproach of Christ greater wealth than the treasures of Egypt, for he was looking to the reward. Right? In Jude verse 5, we read that it says, now I want to remind you, although you once fully knew it, that Jesus, who saved a people out of the land of Egypt, afterward destroyed those who did not believe. Right? Paul says in 1 Corinthians 10:4, for they drank from the spiritual rock that followed them, and the rock was Christ. So the New Testament writers are saying Christ, they might not have known it at the time. He was behind all of these seismic moments in Israel's history, almost like existing eternally, which we believe that would be something we'd say. Which then I think it's like the same thing like with the the fourth one in the fire, in the book of Daniel. Been reading that one recently as well. The fourth appeared in the flames, and we would go, that's Jesus. But then obviously the incarnation in Bethlehem, which is what we celebrate this time of year, it just now it's this idea of Jesus, or Christ, no longer just existing in the Godhead, but actually taking on human form, and staying in human form, like you say, ascends to the right hand of the Father, and will walk in human form with the visible kind of nail marks in his hands or whatever for eternity. I don't know. I guess I don't know. I think it's right that we believe that, but I don't know. I've just been thinking this week. What difference does that make?
Yes.
To me, because I think that's always the point of doctrine. Is like going, okay, what does that even mean? Like, I don't know if it's just because I'm ill and I'm having a lot of out of body experiences this week.
It's too much football.
It's like,
Yeah.
it's like thinking on another plane.
What's happening right now? I agree with you. I think the incarnation for me there's a lot you can mine in the incarnation for what it means every day. So I think the overarching implication of there's a lot, but one of them for me is the fact that we're not trying to escape being human.
Yeah.
Like actually the fullest expression of our humanity in pre-fall perfection is now included in the makeup of God. Like God's going, what I've created you is really good.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times church has gone human bad. We need to somehow free our soul from our humanity, where actually it's not that. And I think that changes our worldview on people.
Yes.
We have to look at people around us and go, there is something uniquely special, something that's uniquely significant about who you actually are in your humanity, because God values humanity enough to go, this is worthy to be a part of who I am, my makeup.
Yes.
The concept, not like so I think that there's something in that which I think if we recaptured becomes interesting in how we're engaging into the world around us.
Yeah.
Rather than, because I think that as Christians, and it's interesting because we're going to look at a little census in a bit, but this real separated field between like us and the world, like these, if you're not in the church, you're the enemy.
Yes.
But I actually think incarnation speaks against that and goes, this isn't the enemy. But what actually, and I was having this conversation with actually someone 2 weeks ago after the Trinity preach that I did, and going, the struggle we have at the fall isn't that we became human beings who are bad. It's we lost what it means to truly be human.
Okay. Yeah.
We became like dehuman. So I think for me, what's interesting in the incarnation, it's a validation of our humanity, and Jesus is coming to restore us. Our humanity is actually coming to go, this is what it fully means to be human. And I think a lot of times when we look at culture and we see the run of culture, it's a dehumanization that when we're starting to self-describe our own genders or identity, that's no longer human.
Yeah.
It's a dehumanization. We're robbing ourselves of what it really means to be human beings now.
Yes.
And that feels like the most vocal expression of what I think produced in the fall, which is just the removal of this kind of pure humanity, like us at our best, like all the time. And so I think incarnation for me, it's one of the implications I think incarnation does, is that it forces us on how to rethink about the people around us.
Interesting.
But obviously you've already preached on this, so this may not align with anything you've said this morning. So who knows?
And so my head is so fried right now that I can't get away from Nacho Libre in my head. And what I'm thinking in my head is Incarnation.
Some toast under your door.
But yeah, I think like all these doctrinal things, they have to ask the question, okay, well, how does this affect my life? You know, if this is the view we hold. Now, obviously we all believe, well, if we're Christian, right?
Yeah.
Professing Christian, we believe that Jesus is fully God and fully man. But I think it's that, for me, just what I'm thinking, how does that work? Is like, how did Christ pre-exist? And of course he did, but how? In what form? Like, you know, was he the angel of the Lord who wrestled with Jacob? Was he the fourth one standing in the fire?
Yeah.
And I think he was. And I think like the New Testament writers, as I've said, there's quite a few verses that speak to, they speak to this idea that like Christ was intimately involved in so many of those Old Testament moments. And I guess that's what makes it all the more significant for the Messianic Jew that this Christ is now clothed in humanity and is now a baby. And I was thinking about that even because I don't know whether I did it this morning or not, but I was thinking, wouldn't it be cool to like preach with like Levi, Jake and Sophie's new baby boy in my hands? Because it's a massive leap, isn't it? To see a baby boy and to go, that's God.
Yeah.
That is the Savior of the world.
And it's crazy because it's not that has the potential to be, may become, could work out to be. It's in that moment when that holding that is, if you are holding Jesus as a little tiny baby, that's 100% God.
Yes.
It's not when he grows up, he's going to become God. This is fully God right now.
Yeah, right.
Like this is fully the Savior of the world.
Yes.
Like right now in this moment, like here it is.
Yes.
And I think that it's so hard to quantify those things because I think that they add to one of the biggest things that I've been reflecting on since the Trinity stuff, and we'll probably speak about into what you're talking about, is this idea that these incomprehensible things is what should be driving us to faith.
Yeah.
And the minute I affirm this through faith about Jesus, there are a lot of other things that even if I don't agree with, I now have to affirm through faith about Jesus.
Yeah.
It changes my relationship with Jesus' self-disclosures of who he is.
Yes.
So it's like when people say, well, I don't believe that Jesus could ever love me. All right. Through faith, you have to just believe it then.
Yes.
It's telling you it's who he is. And I think that if we get the beginning wrong and we think, well, I can drop the beginning, I don't need to, when it is blatantly, you're never going to understand this. You will only believe this through faith. It lets us drop everything else that comes along with that, things he says. And I think that for me, like that starting point of this is something that we believe through faith. We just affirm it. Like Jesus pre-existed fully in the Godhead. And he did. And so we affirm this thing through faith. And if you take it on board, cool. Now also Jesus says this, and he says this, and he says this. And you can agree with all of it, but it's what he's saying. So it's through faith that you have to just accept it, live it out, and follow it.
No pressure.
No, none at all. None at all. But obviously, there's the census came out, so this will speak a little bit into what you're saying.
Also,
so for those of you
in the central nativity story, they took a census, didn't they?
Exactly. And their results were this weren't dissimilar. No, they probably were very dissimilar to the ones we're going to look at. But if you haven't seen the census, hold on, check this out.
The 2021 census gives a snapshot into how Britain has changed in the last decade. And perhaps the most significant findings are about religion and race. Now, this map reflects how densely populated Christian communities are in England and Wales. And for the first time ever, less than half the population of England and Wales describe themselves as Christian, down from 58.3% in 2011 to 46.2% last year, a drop of 5.5 million people.
So, that's crazy. What do you think of that?
Well, I've got a few observations here. It's not great, is it? Let's be honest.
No.
I'm right in thinking that the census have been done since, like, for 1,500 years, right?
Yeah, I
Is that
think
right?
so. I think so. I don't know for 1,500 years, but it could be. It's been done for a long time.
It was like 550 AD or something that the census started to be done. So from the Dark Ages, and so it's significant to go for the first time in our history. This isn't just like 100-year-old database that we're storing here. The UK's always been good at keeping its history and keeping a check on the lay of the land and all that. But I think obviously it's gone from 59.3 to 46.2 in 10 years. I'd like to know how much COVID played into that.
Yeah.
I think COVID had in many ways, I wouldn't say devastating effect on the church, but I would say in terms of attendance and in terms of maybe people checking in their walk with God, I think it did have a devastating effect on that. Cause people to fall out of habit. So obviously I'm kind of going flip. That's a lot. Like that's, what is it, like 15% drop, which equates to about 6 million people.
Yeah.
That's a lot of people to lose in 10 years, isn't it?
Dude, that's a huge amount.
That's
huge
crazy.
amount of people.
That's like New Zealand.
Yeah.
Basically. And then my other thought was, but yet Muslim is in the people who identify as practicing Muslims or whatever has increased, and Hindu and Sikh and Buddhism. So only Christianity. Now, I don't know how much of that is because of biological growth in these faith-based. So, you know, Muslims having more children, Hindus having more children, Sikhs having more children. Yeah. And I think typically those cultures are better at passing on their faith.
Yeah,
They're better at like bringing their children up with their worldview and with their belief system than, you know, we are far less. I don't want to say how do I say, we're far less. Intentional is not the right word. We're so tolerant that actually we don't want to force it on our kids.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if that's a good thing or not. But it's like it really is only bad news for the Christian.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, ugh.
So I think that I totally agree with you, because I was reflecting on and going, and for me, I was thinking the same thing as yours. I was going, why is it that every major religion's worldview seems to be increasing, but the Christian worldview is decreasing?
Yeah.
Now, it's not like I feel like, you know, I couldn't look and go, wow, there's been a really aggressive Hindu outreach program that's been happening across the UK, you know, like Hindu Alpha. I don't know what that would be or whatever. Like, it doesn't feel like that exists.
Yeah.
But I do think that the biggest shift within church has been this, and I agree with you, I don't have a better word for it, but it feels like a disregard of the role of the parent to pass faith to the children.
Yes.
And an openness and tolerance for the child to make their own journey of discovery.
Yeah.
Or whatever rubbish that is, where I just don't think in those other worldviews that exists.
Yeah.
It's an anomaly of thinking.
Yes.
It's like, sorry, what you're saying? Yeah. Like, what? My child will think for themselves. Yeah, that's never going to happen. And yet in church, we've gone, look how godly we are, because we're not prescribing to our kids what they should be.
Yes.
Which I think runs counter to the Bible anyway. But
yeah.
And I think now you're seeing it 10 years later, this kind of new weirdy worldview. Because it's not like, you could understand it if they went, 5 million people have stopped being Christians, they've all become atheists. I'd go, but it's weird. It's like, no, these other people are discovering God elsewhere. Not for Christians. It's not in church. And I think that's kind of really weird to me, how that's kind of worked out.
Well, I guess what I was going to say, like, in the Muslim faith, it seems a lot more integral to their whole life. That they would be desiring Muslim government, they would be desiring Muslim law, so Sharia law, Muslim education, Muslim culture, you know, all these things that, like, their Islamic beliefs doesn't just stay with this idea of going to, where is it they go to? Temple?
Mosque,
that's it. It doesn't, sorry, my head's in a phase.
You're all over it. Where do they head to? What's the
You know what? Louise texted me. She texted me at the start of this. I only just watched it, and she said, "Say your mental focus." Right there. Oh, where is it? She says, "This is." Oh, come on.
So how would you say your mental focus is? Oh, it's focused. I haven't. Look, I have trouble even saying to myself my own head the number of years. I no more think of myself as being as old as I am than fly.
I don't even know what that means.
Louise sent me that saying, "This is Richard talking to me on Fire Mountain." Oh, I'm focused. I'm
Yeah.
trying. So they don't just hit mosque up once a week. It's integral to their family. It's integral to their business. It's integral to everything. Whereas, like Christianity, obviously, it's a lot more nominal. It's a lot more passive. So, if your child doesn't enjoy church, then or don't go to church, rather than trying to establish your business, with the intent of serving the kingdom of God or whatever.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Interestingly, I watched Nigel Farage's response on the census. Right? What do you think he blames for it?
Oh, who, Nigel Farage?
Yeah.
There be multiple things, but I think it's all going to come down to immigrants. That's where we're going to end up.
Yeah. So that's what I was expecting. I thought he was going to say it's immigration. He didn't talk about immigration once. He blamed the church.
Oh,
He said,
Margie.
yeah, he says it's the church's fault. He says the church is too embarrassed about what it believes. And he says Christians are too shy. He says, like, if you believe this thing, believe it, like, and go after it. And I was like, let's go. Like, literally, because I was expecting a bit of an immigration. He didn't talk about that at all. He says it's a poor reflection on the church. The fact that the church isn't bold enough in standing for what it believes.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, here we go. Let's go. So Nigel Farage for PM, let's go.
Yeah. Nigel Farage making Brexit great again.
But I thought. I mean, I don't imagine Nigel Farage is a Christian, but I don't know.
No.
But I think it's an interesting. Like he also said about the fact that like loads of public scandals.
Yeah.
Loads of lawsuits, all these things that have been dragging the church over and over and over through the mire, that has just robbed people of their confidence and robbed people of going church should be central in state or whatever. And he was like, basically, the church needs to sort itself out.
And I think that there's truth in that. Like I don't think that I wouldn't look and go, ooh, on this one single issue, one very slithered viewpoint, Nigel, I may agree with you, but only on this one very single, very slithered.
More than you'd like to think.
No, I don't know if I would though. Even if I did agree, I would just change my viewpoint to not agree. When you were telling me, well, this is what Nigel Farage said, I was thinking, I wonder if I could become a Muslim. How does that work? Because I agree. I think that it's all weird. Somehow church has become this place of the wrong tolerance. That's the only way I can describe it. I think we tolerate things that we should never have tolerated, that are kind of anti-biblical, like that deeply affect who we are, our identity. This is what makes us us, and we'll stand for that, and we'll be prepared to talk about that, and we'll be prepared to go, these are distinctives. And I think other religious groups in the UK do that far better than us now, which is a really strange place to be, because in theory we should have the feeling of way more rights. So even in the census, the conclusion still is the majority of people in the UK would say, I'm a Christian.
Yeah.
Their identity of faith is, so it feels kind of a weird place to go, we can't say these things because we could offend people, when most people believe what we kind of believe in theory. But other religions have done it better. But the church has somehow swallowed. It's just, I don't know where tolerance and godliness became so intertwined when it came to some of these things, where if you get up and you go, so last Sunday when I was preaching, I was like, this is just who God says he is. And if you disagree, you're wrong.
Yeah.
You're wrong. Because this is the truth of what we stand for. And I could feel it when I said it. I was going, this is so foreign language nowadays in church.
Yeah.
To look and go, if you disagree with what the Bible said, you're actually wrong.
Yeah.
And it felt really strange. Like this should feel at home in this space, at this place. It should feel really at home. And it didn't. It felt really, and I don't think at Sunny Hill we do push tolerance as like a godly virtue on if it conflicts with the Bible. I think we do think we should be tolerant of people and like all of that. somehow church has just gone, it's not godly if you don't tolerate every other viewpoint and just let it all be a mush. And I don't quite know when that happened, but I know it's happened. And I think that is an anomaly in other religious circles in the UK.
It's that tolerance then has to become celebration, doesn't it? You have to celebrate other ideas. You have to celebrate other worldviews. And I think the key to it is not so much well, I know you're not suggesting let's become less tolerant. But I do think that, like, I think two things. I think the church has got to get its act together. And I've been thinking about this. How do you grow the church? Like, because biological growth is one avenue, but that's not sufficient. Do you know what I mean? Like, perpetuating the faith just by passing it on to our children and then passing it on to their children. That's one strategy. But actually, there's millions of people who don't know Jesus. And so I don't know. I don't know. When I saw the census, I was like, wow, we've got a real uphill struggle here. Like, because we got to almost turn the tide of the trend of culture, which seems to be running towards a secularist kind of ethos. Like, there's all this conversation now about whether God should be included, or the church, should we say, should be included in the coronation of King Charles. Like, if that doesn't reflect the majority of British people, then why would we do it? Why would we have like that sanctimonious ceremony or whatever, and the praying over King Charles and all that sort of stuff? Surely all that stuff's done now, and loads of people are saying it's done. Like, we're in a new time. But the problem with that as a nation, even if we just think societally, is that the biggest faith by 2015 will be Islam in Britain, not Christianity. And I think at that point, then many people think, let's keep Christianity. Let's keep Christianity as like our state beliefs or whatever.
So I think this is interesting, because I think that your wrestling through incarnation ties straight back into this conversation, because I think that incarnation, it's a crazy idea, but what it does do is it settles into the very center of a Christian's world being, the prominence of Christ. So incarnation puts Christ right, not just in the middle, but right at the very base of everything. It's looking and going, here he is. Like, so it's not only here is the savior of the world, here is God in human form, but it goes beyond that. Here's the standard, here's the measure, here's, if you're wanting to know how you should respond in a situation, here it is. Here is God on the earth in all the complexity. And it's a weird thing, because it feels like the early believers were trying to wrestle nearly through some of the same struggle we have, maybe not at the same level in terms of, but there's the Roman rule. Here is the majority view of what belief is. And yet into all of these things, God's breaking into these spaces. And I wonder, even on issues around things like tolerance, if the incarnation begins to speak more profoundly into that than we can even grasp. This idea of looking and going, well, if I affirm incarnation, firstly, I have to affirm virgin birth. I can't affirm not a virgin birth. Incarnation and virgin birth go hand in hand. So already I'm at odds with nearly any logical thought process that anybody could have. So by simply affirming this, I go, I have to be, if you say that you don't affirm virgin birth, I have to be intolerant to that viewpoint. It's wrong. It's just wrong. It's not the truth. So by making this simple affirmation in faith to this one idea pushes me to have to affirm virgin birth. This pushes me to have to then affirm and affirm and affirm and affirm and affirm. And actually all of those affirmations go, I'm putting down markers, like little markers, to go, here is what I believe is true, which by implication must mean if you say something different, you're wrong. And so I think it's really weird, because these doctrinal statement of faith, affirmations of belief become identity markers. I remember a lecturer of mine at Bible college mapped out 5 identity markers that the Jewish people had to make sure people knew that a Jewish person was a Jewish person. And so there were these 5 key markers. And he was always saying, as Jesus came and the Gentiles now become into the fold or brought into the people of God, and God's going, now these are my people.
Yeah.
Like, what are the new identity markers? And I think some of the statements of faith we make are those things, because they put us at odds with the world in terms of, we can't tolerate that viewpoint. We have to affirm this. And it's a faith statement. We have no good reason outside of it's just faith. And I think incarnation, I've never really connected incarnation to tolerance, but I think there is something troubling in my thinking, because I think when even in this, as I'm thinking now, I'm going, yeah, I can see how incarnation really pushes me to not be tolerant of certain things.
Yeah.
And that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Because I would never look and go, incarnation is a statement of intolerance. It's not. But it does push me to look into the world right now and go, I can't affirm that and affirm incarnation. They're two separate, they're two disconnected things.
Yes.
And I think that stuff, like, that's really fascinating, because I think these Christmas time affirmations of faith become way more, I don't like the word militant, but way more posturing, way more like, hey, we are something here.
Yes.
Than just, oh, Jesus came and it's all nice. It's like, actually, no, this happened, and you believe it happened. Yeah, cool. You can't then believe this, and this. You just can't.
That's interesting. It's funny when you said about it plays to incarnation. I didn't think you were going to go that way on it. I thought you were going to talk about, that the Christians or the church should be incarnational. And we're looking at the sense, understanding what does it mean to embody Christ in the world, and what does it mean to like dwell among people. And I think maybe there's something to be said for that in terms of the census, that like the church being present and not just some state funded entity that sits on the periphery of life, draining taxpayers' money, but something that actually impacts the immediate world. But
that's cool.
I'm struggling, mate.
No, that's cool. I mean, we're way over time anyway, so that's been great. That's been great. So what I want to do is, this description for Fire Mountain is going to be Fire Mountain episode 38, the one where Richard makes sense and Dom just sits looking, like trying to go, where am I right now? Where am I?
Right. I feel like I'm going to need about 8 hours sleep now after that conversation.
Well, you're welcome. It's my
Freedom.
dulcet tones. Nice, very nice shirt. I'm just trying to keep you on long enough to see if you keep taking more layers of clothes off as we go along. So you started with the beanie, you got into a cap, you took off your fleece. Wait long enough, dude. It's just going to be you just sitting there in your pants going, when is this ending?
Is anyone else hot? Is anyone else hot?
Well, awesome. That was fun.
Thanks, mate.
Cool.
What are you going to call this episode?
Oh, I don't know yet. We'll see what happens. It'll probably end up being something about the one about incarnation. I don't know.
Yeah,
we'll see what happens. Something like that. Something like that.
Nice. Good job, Richard. We've got 2 more, mate. Two
more, dude. This is crazy. And one of them has to be a Christmas one. So
what's that? Is that going to be the last one we do, is it?
Yeah, potentially. I don't know what we really do for a Christmas one. But hey, we'll see what happens.
I reckon.
The Christmas.
The Christmas myths.
The Christmas myths.
The Christmas myths. I reckon.
Okay, we must do that. That sounds good.
All right. Bless you, mate.
Speak to you later. Bye, everyone.